Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you here on this Tuesday afternoon. Once again, we are back. The Jaybefaunt channel is available on all major podcast platforms, so go ahead and subscribe there. Also part of Revolutionary Blackout Network, so you can find me there on Sundays for the JB Show and on Thursdays for the Savvy and JB Show. If you guys have not already, go ahead and give the stream a like. This pushes me out into the algorithm so I can reach more people to inform and inspire and encourage as we move along in this system. So thank you so very much for that. If you guys have not already, please make sure to go ahead and give a sub to my Substack. This gives you email notifications whenever I go live, upload clips, or write any articles. So you have that there as well. So thank you so very much for that. Good to see all of you here who are in and accounted for. Love to have you all in. So we are going to say hello to the people in the chat really quick first, and then we'll get into our news stories for the day. So first off, we have Jacqueline coming in and say, hey, everyone, good to see you, Jacqueline. Is this a little bit high? It's a little bit. Yeah, there we go. All right, good to see you, Jacqueline. Nice to have you in here now. Say, hey, everyone. We have the Quantum Alchemist coming in saying, LOL, want to hear a funny story that most people don't know and are not aware about? This is, in fact, the second time the U.S. in corporate greed destroyed the video game market. Interesting. So, you see. The Quantum Alchemist says there was a time in the late 60s and 70s when U.S. companies dominated the gaming market completely. Thousands of games were made, to be said, all to crap. See, it were the Japanese and Nintendo in the 90s revived the entire industry, gaming again. Yeah, we're going to be talking about it. That's going to be interesting to get into. Jacqueline says, how can people afford to buy games when they can't afford to buy the necessities? Some would argue that the gaming is a necessity because it is cheaper to do that than many other things. Desert Mantis says, fun movie classic, Repo Man. All right. Who else we got in here? Who else we have? We have Terry Connolly coming in saying, greetings, JB and fam. Good to see you, Terry. All right, we have the Maverick says it's only proper game if it has the Maverick in it. Lifts hair, haha. Robbie Burns says everybody's going against each other. There's a lot going on today. We're gonna get into it. Also, just to see anybody who is in the Rockfin chat, if you guys are here and accounted for, yes, we are going to go into that as well. I want to make sure I get to my peeps in the Rockfin too. And say my hellos. All right. You have Anna Mayer says, looking sharp, JB. Thank you so very much, Anna. Nice to have you in here as well. Really appreciate it. All right. And let's check on the Rumble side to see, is there anybody in Rumble saying hello? All right. We got a couple people watching, but they're kind of quiet. That's okay. Nice to have you. All right. So we're going to get into this two stories that I have for you guys today. One of the big stories that we're going to get into is we're going to get into about rising crisis. Repossessions are on the rise. And to be honest with you, this is really an indicative of a trend that a lot of people aren't looking into that much. And I think we need to pay more attention because this is just showing how this system is unsustainable and is showing how working people are bearing the brunt of greed. And speaking of greed, our first story we're going to talk about is capitalism destroys video games. This is going to be a very interesting subject, and I hope you are here for it. There once was a young man named JB, and JB was an inquisitive kid, a kid that loved video games growing up. And as a child, JB, I'm speaking in third person, lived in near or poverty level growing up. So whenever I would go to friends' houses or to families' houses, the kids there would have either a Sega, typically a Sega Genesis, or a Nintendo or Super Nintendo. And it always fascinated me, but we couldn't afford it. Until one day, my mom was able to get me a Super Nintendo. And by that time, everybody else was getting a Sony PlayStation. So pretty much I was always behind in the video game market. So I remember having my first Nintendo, having the Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt combo. I know, I look good for my age. And then I quickly graduated to Super Nintendo, right? In fact, I got the little compact Super Nintendo preloaded right now over there with the Super Mario World and, Zelda and all that. Anyway. And as I've gotten older, video games have progressed and video games have gotten better in graphics. They've gotten better in storylines and in this complexity. Video games are now just playable movies now, right? You can say it like that. But another thing that we've noticed, especially those of us that have gotten older, people, especially those of us who are millennials, is that the quality of these said games have actually deteriorated over time. You ask any gamer, right? My boyfriend's a gamer, right? A lot of them have said, well, there are some definite things that you've seen where the quality has gone down, as well as you've seen more of a cash grab, right? DLCs, anyone? So when it comes to video games, even though it is one of the biggest pastimes of many of us here in the United States, a lot of us are noticing the greed from big corporations in this. So one of the things I want to do is I actually want to go into this particular video that actually talks about the greed of video games. And it really it's more of, not just a reaction, but this is more of me talking about why they kind of dance around saying it's capitalism, but ultimately the problem is capitalism. And I can explain why. So let's get into it. So this is out of More Perfect Union. This was actually a really good video. And it says, new corporate greed is killing the video game industry. Investors flock to buy up video game studios during the pandemic. Now they're laying off thousands of workers. And we're getting glitchier games, delayed releases and favors fewer workers forced to put in inhumane hours. So I want to get into this. Let's start.
If you've played a video game in the last year, you've probably seen something like this. Vampires in Redfall floating aimlessly in the sky. Starfield characters missing faces. And Hogwarts Legacy wizards falling through the ground into nothingness. While I can admit glitches and bugs can be hilarious, they've also left me wondering, is this the new standard? Then, just this January, One of my favorite series, Deus Ex, a franchise that arguably transformed gaming when it was released in 2000, got canceled out of nowhere. And Deus Ex is not alone. In the last year, unprecedented numbers of games have been canceled, workers laid off, and studios shuttered. The teams that make Saints Row, Red Faction, and Deus Ex have all lost their jobs. Even studios that make huge games like Tomb Raider and Borderlands are being hit with downsizing. Now, you're probably thinking, Alec, there's a very simple reason for all of this. The economy is rough, video game sales are down, and tons of industries are laying people off. Do these companies have any other option besides tightening their belts or shutting down?
This is the excuse is always given. Well, we got to tighten our belts. Times are hard. The economy, inflation. We just can't. We got to let some of these people go. And then in letting people go, what ends up happening is the quality of the product diminishes. And when the product quality diminishes, people start to make excuses for the corporations. Well, the economy, inflation, blah, 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 blah. But is that really the actual issue? Well, it kind of gets debunked. So let's continue.
I decided to find out for myself because things just weren't adding up. I mean, in 2023, American consumers spent $57 billion on video games alone. So I started digging, and I discovered it is not the result of a tough economy. In fact, that's just a helpful cover story for what's really going on. To understand the present grim reality of the video game industry, we have to go back to the start of the pandemic. 2020 was a huge year for video games. As people were locked inside their homes, game sales skyrocketed. They skyrocketed so much, in fact, that investors started eyeing the industry as their next great cash cow.
So this reminds me of the big boom in sites like Grubhub, DoorDash, Uber Eats, Postmates, right? We were all locked inside because of this raging pandemic that was happening outside of our doors. And then we were like, we're home. We don't have much to do. So things that we need to do to occupy our time at home, like video games, go up exponentially. I would also say the use of audiobooks have went up. The buying of books have went up. Amazon sales jumped because everybody had to deliver their stuff home, right? Look, even sex toys went up. You know what I mean? And people were bored. It all went up, right? Because people were at home and they had to occupy their time. How many people bought more subscriptions to Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime? All these things that are centered around being home go up. And so, of course, the sales would go up. So when people go, oh, we're tightening our belt, but y'all have record profits. How can you be tightening your belt when you're getting fatter? You know what I'm saying? You got more. You got bigger. So let's continue.
2021 is where you see the massive investment. When you look at a chart, it's like 2020, 2019, 2021. It's wild.
All those franchises hit by layoffs or closures I mentioned a bit ago, one thing ties them together: a huge video game conglomerate called Embracer Group. Emboldened by this once-in-a-lifetime market, Embracer Group bought up studio after studio, including many I've already mentioned, makers of Borderlands, Tomb Raider, Deus Ex. They even bought the company that owns the board game Settlers of Catan. And the workers at Embracer Studios were kind of excited.
I would say that it was a more positive reception.
That's Alex, a former mission designer at Embracer-owned Volition Games, which made Saints Row. Embracer wasn't the only studio with this business plan. Microsoft merged with Activision in 2022 and has been on its own consolidation push.
The biggest companies with the most sustainability and diversified revenue streams are buying up as much of the industry as they possibly can, seemingly in order to buy up talent and to buy up IP so that they can spin that off into as many profitable ventures as possible.
That sounds bad. Remember when I talked about the mergers and acquisitions of Tempur Sealy trying to buy up Mattress Firm, right? I talked about that last week, right? The goal in capitalism is for corporations that, when a small handful of people or one person owns the entire means of production, the goal is to grow infinitely as much as you possibly can. The duty of the CEO, the chief executive officer, they have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders. Is even written into law. You have to do that. Meaning year over year, you have to grow. No matter what, you have to keep growing. That growth means one of the things you have to do is to merge or acquire your competition. And that's what's been happening, is that these video game companies have been merging and acquiring as much of the competition as possible. But what happens when you merge and acquire the competition? That means there's less competition, meaning less innovation. And less innovation means who suffers? Well, it is the workers who suffer, as well as the consumer, you, who suffers. And so because of this, that's how capitalism works, because it requires infinite growth on a planet with finite resources. I want to repeat that again. Capitalism, not commerce, capitalism requires infinite growth on a planet with finite resources. I want people to remember, capitalism and commerce are not the same thing. So people will be like, well, you have to buy and sell. That's capitalism. No, baby, that's commerce. Okay? Capitalism is about the ownership and who owns what, right? Commerce is about the process of buying and selling. Okay? All right, so let's get back into this.
That's Colin, a game developer who did not work for Embracer, but has a unique claim to fame.
I was laid off twice in 1 year, yes. The big thing about game companies is when they become bigger, there is a certain amount of growth that those shareholders are expecting.
And to achieve that growth, game companies do a few things. They'll buy up studios to achieve a greater market share. They'll rush games that have no business being released at the expense of inhumane working hours for their staff.
So the first two things he said is buying up companies to increase market share. That's a part of capitalism, right? So we already talked about that. But then also they're either cutting workers or they are pushing workers to the brink to get these games out. And sometimes these games are not even finished. And then in order to increase the value that you have to purchase these games for, they will purposely keep them incomplete. And then they will offer DLCs, which are downloadable content, in order for you to purchase more than the game. So let's say, hypothetically, I should have brought one of my games out. But let's say, hypothetically, you got Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, right? Which came out earlier this year. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. But let's say they also have a DLC. So now you spent $70 for that game. But then the DLC is another $20. That means you just spent $90 on the game. But then they have another DLC that comes out, and you may have to spend $10. So now you're spending $100 in that game. And then another DLC comes out, and another DLC comes out, and another DLC comes out. You see how they're squeezing you dry just on one game, all because they didn't finish, all because they want to just get as much out of you as possible. That's capitalism. And then the quality of the game is crap, or nowhere near where it should be. Let's continue.
They'll cram in as many microtransactions as possible or chase whatever new monetization strategy a competitor is doing.
The video game.
That's another thing. The microtransactions. So if you want a certain skin or a certain little feature that you don't necessarily have on the games, well, guess what? They're going to charge for that. And it may be that skin for that particular character maybe only be 99 cents, $1. But then you get another skin, and another skin, and another skin, and another piece, and another piece, and another piece. And the next thing you know, you spent $50 extra on the game. You spend $60 to $70 on a game, and you spend another $50 on the game. You're spending upwards of $110, $120 for a game. Millennials, come here for a second. Remember when video games were $60, $70, but then you bought the game and that was it? You didn't have any DLCs. You didn't have to download or buy anything else in order to have the game. You just had to play the game, and maybe you would earn certain points in the game, and then you get new features in the game. But after that, that was it. Even though the game prices technically are still the same, they're not. Because what they do is they keep the game incomplete, and then you end up spending double than what you would on the game. So in actuality, you're spending between $110 and $140 for a brand new game when you factor in the DLCs and the microtransactions. That's how much it costs us now. But they're giving you games that are incomplete. It's sad. It's really sad.
Transactions as possible or chase whatever new monetization strategy a competitor is doing.
The video game industry consolidation is leading to less risk. You're going to see less games that do new things, that are engaging with new ideas.
These gaming conglomerates are taking a page from Hollywood by milking established franchises for all they're worth.
So, how many Street Fighters have we had? How many Final Fantasies? Look, we're about to embark on what, the 17th Final Fantasy now, right? Which is kind of technically an anthology series, but still, how many different Resident Evils do we need? You know, and this is something I've talked to with a lot of people. When it comes to capitalism, the goal is risk aversion while maximizing profits. Meaning, you want to take less risks so that you won't lose that much money. This is why we have a Star Wars Episode 7, 8, and 9. This is why we had to come out with an Ocean's 8. Oh, no, sorry, Ocean's, yeah, I think it was Ocean's 8. After we did 11, 12, and 13. This is why we're coming out with part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5, remake after remake of the same stories. Why? Because they don't want to put more risk into new things, because new things may flop. And if they flop, then guess what? You lose that money. Some of the best stories, some of the best franchises we have ever seen in entertainment have come from risks. Star Wars was a risk. Harry Potter was a risk. The MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, was a risk. How many people were real fans of Iron Man before 2008? How many people were actually following him? How many people were fans of Thor? They have to. Risk is what actually helps create that actual fanfare. That actual, like, oh my God, this is something new, something novel, something we have never seen before. But unfortunately, because capitalists want to retain as much profit as they possibly can, they don't want to risk in new stories. Therefore, they're going to recycle the same thing over and over and over again. This is why Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens, is basically a carbon copy of Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. You'll never get anything really, truly new because they don't want to risk it. Like, for instance, The Incredibles. Great movie. Technically, it's based on the Fantastic Four, but it was a great story. But they're going to recycle The Incredibles. They're going to do a third one, and then a fourth one, and the fifth one probably. Because they're going to keep it as a cash cow. But they don't want to focus on anything new. And then they'll have spinoffs. You know. And that'll be that. So.
Beholden to shareholders, it's not enough to make a game that makes some money and pays its workers and leadership a decent wage. Shareholders expect constant growth. In other words, an unsustainable return on investment. Things didn't start unraveling for Embracer until 2022.
Honestly, we didn't hear about the $2 billion deal until it fell through.
Embracer is a publicly traded company, but one particular investment partner helped continue their industry consolidation.
Embracer Group had a $1 billion investment from Savvy Games Group.
Savvy Games Group, for the record, is a giant in the gaming space. They bought huge stakes in EA, Take-Two Interactive, and spent over $4 billion alone to buy a mobile game company called Scopely. They're also an arm of the Public Investment Fund, the wealth fund for Saudi Arabia's royal family. Savvy's billion-dollar investment in Embracer happened in June of 2022. And shortly after, Embracer spent $395 million on the rights to Lord of the Rings and bought another round of studios looking to grow their portfolio for their investors.
Savvy Games Group intended to invest another $2 billion in there, and that fell through.
Up until late last night, we had an amazing cash flow. I think that's history now, so it's not that relevant.
For undisclosed reasons, the deal with Savvy Games imploded, and Embracer's shopping spree was suddenly looking like a huge mistake.
But hey, this is business, and I know shareholders and other stakeholders expect me to win every battle. This was a big one. And we didn't win this one, but I'm sure we will win many of the future battles.
And so this is business. This is how it goes. This is capitalism. We have to do. Look, we have to do what we have to do. You know, we hire too many people, then we have to let them off. That's his business. We had a big cash flow. Now we have to let them go. So yeah.
And that's where Embracer went bad.
We got like an email at like 9:05 or something for an 11 o'clock all hands meeting. The people from Gearbox thankfully just rip off the Band-Aid and we're like, yep, we're closing the studio. One of the guys who I think worked there since Volition opened was like, well, that's 30 years down the drain. it's hard to watch the thing you've been a part of for, probably a majority of his life just get destroyed, and through no fault of his own.
People who have been laid off from Embracer and elsewhere are devastated. They're seeing their industry crumble in a way that they haven't seen before. Last year, there were a little bit over 10,000 layoffs in the video game industry. 5,000 of those were through Embracer Group, which is significant.
In a similar move, Microsoft ended up laying off 1,900 Activision and Xbox employees.
It's really, really hard for the people that have been laid off to find new jobs. They're in this pool now that, if we're counting last year, 20,000 people were laid off in total from last year to right now in a year and a half. People are unable to pay rent. They live in cities that they relocated to for these jobs, cities that are very, very expensive. They have families, they have medical conditions, they're losing their health care.
During the height of the pandemic, people like me, we use social distancing as an excuse to 100% Pokemon Snap.
Hang on, let's focus on the human aspect of this, because I think this is really important. These mergers and acquisitions always result in employee layoffs and employees getting stiffed because the shareholders got to get theirs. If the company does not increase in profit, it still makes profit, but the profit margins don't increase, the shareholders are upset, right? They don't get to add on to their yacht. But the employee, if they get laid off, they lose their house. They lose their apartment. They can't afford to pay their electric bill. They can't afford food. They lose their car. So see the risk compared between an investor or a shareholder and a worker. And so when you go down the line to these corporate parasites, they only see you as a number on a sheet. And so then it goes, well, let's lay off the ones who are the ones who we need to lay off. Sometimes it's due to performance. Sometimes it's just like who they can trim the fat and save the most money from. And also, a lot of people don't talk about this, about the workers who still remain. Because let's say you have a team of 20 on a particular project, and then they end up laying off half of those people. They're not going to hire on another 10. That means that you're going to have to do double the work for the same pay. That's how capitalism works. And now they're going to be running on skeleton crews, expecting you to do the same job that it took 20 people to do that now 10 have to do. And do you think that the quality of said game would be just as good done in that same amount of time?
Families, they have medical conditions, they're losing their health care.
During the height of the pandemic, people like me, we use social distancing as an excuse to 100% Pokemon Snap or perfect our Animal Crossing island. They may have even convinced a few friends to pick up a game for the first time in years. Of course that wouldn't last. I still have not completed Pokemon Snap, and my Steam library is overflowing with games I don't have time to play anymore.
Any executive who actually understands business knew this was a bubble and could see this happening. And I think it, in the most generous reading possible, receded more than they thought it would. But I don't think a single person who ramped up a ton of hiring during the pandemic thought that they wouldn't have to lay off a single person.
Whether you're angry about laid off workers, canceled games, or prematurely released games, Lars Wingefors, CEO of Embracer, laid out the logic behind it all.
Our overruling principle is to always maximize shareholder value in any given situation.
Shareholder value. Meaning, their dividend checks matter more than your life. That's it. And every single time we talk about corporate profits, especially in the realms of capitalism, people go, well, that's just the nature of business. It doesn't have to be, though. Or some people will say, well, that's just corporate greed. That's not capitalism. That's not real capitalism. No, baby, that's real capitalism. Because capitalism is about who owns what, not about commerce. So when it comes to capitalism and who owns what, they don't care about the real people who are actually making the product, the people who actually really run the company. Because ultimately, it's about how much money they're getting on that dividend check. Workers be damned.
I think the goal of maximizing quarterly profits is really the death of any artistic industry. And that view on it, where we have to absolutely maximize profit, is the thing that is eating us alive right now.
One thing that kept coming up as I spoke to journalists and game developers is the question of institutional knowledge. The industry has, for years, been laying off workers once a game is completed. But some of the most revered games, like Elden Ring, Tears of the Kingdom, are made by studios that hang on to its workers, game after game, sequel after sequel. And I'd argue it shows.
In my first layoff, now you've got 80 people who lost 40 people who now need to fill in all of those gaps among themselves and can't hire to fill those slots. So you're either going to need to make a smaller project, a completely different project, or severely cut scope. And even then, you might not have all the tools that you had previously, because now you've got giant knowledge gaps amongst your team.
With this recent round of layoffs being so severe, the problem won't just be that an experienced worker is gone from a specific studio. They might leave the industry altogether. Imagine how many more buggy launches and failed promises are going to start popping up in games in 2 years when half the experienced people are gone.
Even when I was in college, people told me that the average time for people to spend in games was 5 years, and then people either burn out or find something different that doesn't crush them. And so now, what impetus do people have to stay when it was already risky and now it's just even riskier?
Because of consolidation and mass layoffs, gamers are going to see a decline in good quality games. Maybe, pressed to find the little amount of investment that is out there, big studios will save money by crunching more projects, making more people work inhumane hours, and rushing more games that will inevitably get mocked mercilessly on the internet. There is one check on this mad dash to appease shareholders: unions. In March.
So, as far as these corporations are concerned, I say they need to be taken out of the hands of these shareholders. They need to be taken out of the hands of these private investors. Because ultimately, it's not just the quality of the games that goes down. It's also workers' lives.
Sega of America employees were the first group of video game workers at a major American company to win a union contract. They negotiated not just pay raises, but layoff protections. Workers at ZeniMax, makers of Fallout and the Elder Scrolls series, unionized in 2023. And while they're still at the bargaining table, They've already won concessions over the use of AI.
Unions aren't going to stop the layoffs tomorrow, but on an individual, like studio level, unions have helped people keep their jobs.
Unionizing would absolutely make for better games. For starters, right now, individuals have very little power, and whether or not you are actually replaceable, you're going to be seen as replaceable. To an executive, a game designer is a game designer. The amount of specialization involved between disciplines of design is not something that is understood at the corporate level. And in general, happier people, or at least people who are cared for and fulfilled in their basic needs, are going to be more effective at their jobs. And a union is something that can absolutely help get people the basic dignity that they deserve in the workplace and in life.
As for myself, I'll probably never see the resolution of the cliffhanger from the last ASX, purely because some executive didn't like the way it looked on a spreadsheet and fired everyone working on it. And when it comes to workers like Colin and Alex, they just want to make good games. In Colin's case, he's now working on indie games he loves.
I think if we are focused on making sustainable teams and making interesting art, the players will find it themselves. And if we are creating niches to be filled, then the niches will be filled.
Now, while I do think that unionization is a good thing, I feel like unionization does not go far enough. I think that workers need to own the company collectively. So gaming worker cooperatives should be more of the goal. Now, let's get into this, because I was looking at the ownership of some of these games, and I was thinking about some of the biggest video game studio mergers and acquisitions. And so let's take a look at this. So some of you may know some of these names. This is list of largest video game mergers and acquisitions. So one of the largest ones was Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard. And am I tripping? That's not $75 billion. That's not $75 billion. That cannot be $75 billion. No. I can see 7.5 billion, but not 75 billion. That can't be right. Right? Guys in the chat, please tell me that's not $75 billion. Hang on. Am I seeing this right? That can't be right. Because if that's actually 75 billion, that has to be a typo on Wikipedia. Please let that be a typo. Because if you're trying to buy Activision Blizzard for $75 billion, how much money does Microsoft have? That means Microsoft has already been $1 trillion company. Activision tried to get Vivendi Games for $18.9 billion. Take-Two Interactive tried to buy Zynga for $12.7 billion. Tencent tried to buy Supercell for $8.6 billion. Microsoft again tried to buy ZeniMax Media for $8.1 billion. Activision Blizzard tried to buy King for $5.9 media. So these are some of the biggest. Look, Electronic Arts tried to buy Glue Mobile for $2.4 billion. And so these mergers and acquisitions really just lead to worse games, worse working conditions, and people get stiffed. Workers get stiffed, consumers get stiffed, everybody gets stiffed. This is another story that had came out last year about how SAG-AFTRA video games, they tried to make sure that people combated the whole AI voiceover issue. So it says SAG-AFTRA leaders on how Hollywood studios could avert a video game strike and why the guild supports game developers unionizing. So it says SAG-AFTRA is trying to avoid another strike, but Actors Union nonetheless has many bones to pick with the video game companies in its latest contract negotiations. Among SAG-AFTRA's key sticking points is trying to get the gaming companies to agree to protections on the ethical use of generative AI, which was one of the biggest issues the union fought hard for its talks with TV and film studios last year. So what they could actually do is they could use AI to produce video game character voices. They can also use AI to produce images for video games, which ultimately would just lead to no work for many video game developers. And the developers would largely be just laid off. It reminds me of what's going on with a lot of people who are, who do coding. A lot of coding is now being given to AI systems, and people who actually were doing coding, when we were told, learn to code, now you're getting laid off. You don't have a job no more. All that learn to code went nowhere. So they're trying to stave off that as well. And being that Microsoft was one of the biggest mergers and acquisitions on the list, it was the biggest merger and acquisition on the list. I wanted to see who collectively owns Microsoft. Well, there's Microsoft Corporation common stock, institutional holdings. Here it is. So institutional holders, well, what do you know? As we always see, the biggest culprits at Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street owning Microsoft. Any wonder why? So this is basically our lives, where a handful of companies own everything. And so you gotta look at it. It is dangerous for people like Larry Fink and Mortimer Buckley to have a say over every product in your life. Who's Larry Fink? Larry Fink is the CEO of BlackRock. Mortimer Buckley is the CEO of Vanguard. They don't want you to know who they are. They don't want you to know their names, but that's who they are. Most companies, most corporations, if you go into their ownership portfolios, you'll see BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. They own a piece of every single company in the world virtually. And who are their CEOs? People like Larry Fink, Mortimer Buckley. Want to go into the tech? You go to people like Peter Thiel. And so those are some of the people who actually own everything. And one of the people, the game developers, was talking about how people lose their housing. I want to go to this because, of course, they're also not paying good enough or they have to lower the pay. Here's outreach from the National Low Income Housing Coalition. I'm going to come back to this for the next segment too, but this is important. Here in Florida, it actually went up. You have to make $35.24 an hour just to afford a 2-bedroom apartment here in the state of Florida. But you also have a lot of people who live in Silicon Valley that also may be working for game developers. So California, you have to make $47.38 an hour in order to afford a two-bedroom rental in California. What about Arizona? Arizona is pretty high. You have to make $32.70 per hour in Arizona. Video game developers are living on the coasts a lot of the times. Jersey, where I'm originally from, $38.08 an hour. Let's look at Massachusetts. Massachusetts is $44.84 an hour. Let's just say you live in Illinois. Well, you have to make $22 I'm sorry, Indiana. There you go. Illinois, you have to make $28.81 an hour just to afford a two-bedroom rental. Washington State, you have to make $40.32 an hour. And so when these video game companies are laying you off, you really have no recourse. You have nowhere to go, and things are so expensive to the point where you're going homeless. Or if you're sleeping on somebody's couch, you are homeless. And so that's the part where I think a lot of people need to focus more on this, about how capitalism really is destroying the gaming industry as well as people's lives, man. Now, I want to share this as well. This is one of the answers I think that is necessary. Let me enlarge this. It says the means of gaming production. It says fed up with toxic industry, video game workers are turning into a radical alternative. So this came out a year ago. It says on his office desk, Alexander Gavriluk keeps two figurines, Vladimir Lenin, the Russian revolutionary, and Josip Broz Tito, the former communist leader of Yugoslavia. Gavrilovic is the founder of the video game industry GameChuck, based out of a tiny office crammed in with computers in Zagreb, the capital of Croatia. The company is organized around equity. Each worker earns the same salary and shares the profits of the games they create. All decisions are reached through anonymous voting on Discord. The 17-person collective recently voted to shorten workdays from 8 hours to 6, and nobody gets fired. They can technically vote people out, but they try not to. Quote, we wanted to show you that you don't actually have to work like everyone else to be successful. Gavrilovic's company is an outlier in the gaming industry, known for its grueling hours, high turnover rates, and worker discontent. Over the past 5 years, industry giants such as Activision Blizzard, Electronic Arts, and Ubisoft have faced lawsuits over mistreating their employees while grappling with the increasing unionization efforts. Since 2018, over 140 collective actions by game workers, including labor complaints at Nintendo, walkouts at Riot Games, and strikes at Blizzard, have been recorded around the world. According to Game Worker Solidarity, a project that tracks labor movements in the industry, small group of game markers is going even further. Rather than fighting for better conditions within existing workplaces and labor structures, it's trying to build new structures. The group hopes to set an example for the $182.9 billion gaming industry, but as it does so, it faces both difficult tasks at making decisions without centralized leadership and a lack of understanding from financiers. So some companies have kept executives, which are still in charge of high-level business decisions, but have otherwise adopted a flat organization model. Others, like GameChuck, go further by introducing democratic decision-making through unionization, collective bargaining agreements that grant more rights to employees. as some reject the concept of having a boss altogether. These companies are organized as worker cooperatives, inspired by 19th century labor movements and socialist thinkers. This is what I'm talking about. Game developers need to collectively and democratically own the gaming studios that they operate. It should not be one person who really doesn't do any of the work to oversee the entire operations and who gets hired and who gets fired. That's not right. Because without them, without the developers, these gaming studios do not work. So therefore, they should be the ones who collectively own, operate, and get the profits from the games. So yes, while I think unionization is a step in the right direction, it is not the entirety of what needs to happen. The workers need to own the studios collectively. And so this is what needs to happen. You'll get a lot of people who may, talk about, these CEOs, how they're necessary. I beg to differ. They're not necessary, because the CEO leaves, the game developers keep the company going. But if the game developers leave, all right. So that's one of the biggest things, I think. And how do you get things like that? Well, you can push for ballot initiatives that force companies to give right of first refusal. Like, for instance, when Microsoft tried to buy Activision, Activision should have been stopped by the government and should have given the employees of Activision right of first refusal. So the employees actually say, yes, we would like to buy Activision, instead of it being allowing to be sold to Microsoft. Then that's what should have happened. Then the employees would have came together and then purchased Activision. And then Activision would be owned by the workers. And the profits from Activision games would go straight to the workers instead of to shareholders. And the running of Activision would have been determined by workers democratically. And that's how it should have been done. But because we have a system that thrives on exploitation and greed, that's not what happens. And then you get big corporations like Microsoft, which are collectively owned by Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street. And they're able to absorb Activision, therefore leading to less competition and less quality in the industry. So this is why I say capitalism kills the video game industry. It's killing the entertainment industry, period. So this is why, if you are a video game, connoisseur, a gamer, start looking into gaming companies that are also co-op run. And then start encouraging more gaming companies, if you know developers, to try to develop gaming co-ops. Because I think ultimately that is what's best for all of us. It's best for the workers. It's also best for you, the consumer, because then the quality of your games that you'll be playing will be top notch. You won't continue to be stiffed by these corporate parasites. Well, like the stream, go ahead. Thank you so very much to everybody for tuning in. We're going to do a little bit of house cleaning, and then we'll get to our primary story for this evening. So while we're at it, I would like to before I get to the chat, I want to give a shout out to the patrons on Patreon, because without you guys, I would not be able to do this work. Y'all make this happen. Y'all keep the lights on. So thank you to all the patrons. And here are the tiers: Mega Jaybefaunters, Super Duper Jaybefaunters, Super Jaybefaunters, Jaybefaunters, Comrades, Solidarity, and JB members. And to all new members, thank you very much. And yes, just to let you guys know, my channel is demonetized. So if you like to support the channel, you can support via Patreon or PayPal. So thank you very much for that. Just to let everybody know who's watching as well, we're actually going to be doing Orlando RBN chapter. We're actually going to be getting together on Sunday, August 4th. Now, the time and location are to be announced, but we will be getting together that day. If you guys would like to join us, you guys can come on out. If you guys would like to donate for further actions in the future, you guys can donate at $Orlando RBN on Cash App. Stay tuned for location and time. So yes, we will be meeting on Sunday, August 4th. If you guys would like to come out and meet me, if you guys, pull up to help our neighbors, we're also going to be talking to our unhoused neighbors, talking to them about why this capitalist system is victimizing all of us and ways in which we can build solidarity together in order to have a better future. So if you guys would like to, you can do that. And so, yes, we are fundraising also for future actions. So if you would like to, you guys can go to Orlando RBN. Our fundraising goal is $1,200 for grocery gift cards. We're definitely trying to get that grocery gift card giveaway out as soon as possible. So thank you so very much for that as well. And I will also put the link in the chat for the Cash App if you guys would like to donate as well. And we will get to the chat right now. So I'm going to check the Rumble chat to see if there's anybody in the Rumble chat. Right now, we're good on that. So, all right. And let's check the Rockfin. We got a few chats in the Rockfin. So let's go into the Rockfin and let's see what people are saying there. All right. Let me see. Dave Burton said this is why we need people at a higher level of the kind of socialist punchback, because we need to know the rest of the people that will fight. Okay, thank you very much. It says not just trying to get expanded welfare, but actually come at them like fighting labor in the day, whether you're officially disabled or somewhat or not disabled, to organize to really fight. Thank you very much for the tip on Rockman as well. Dave says, be interesting if that deal were worth $75 billion. Yeah. Actually, Dave first says, I'm offended if one video game is worth that much money to buy. Yeah, me too. Me too, Dave. That to me is crazy. Hemp car. What? What in the world did you wait, hold up. White House is pushing ahead research to cool Earth by reflecting back sunlight? What in the world is, oh my stars and stripes, hemp car? What did you send me? It says wait till they start spraying or already are. Will kill tens of thousands a year. UN says cancer will go up by 77% by 2050. Says too bad celebrities don't back RBN like they back Panthers. What? That's it. I gotta read that. White House is pushing ahead research to cool the Earth by reflecting back sunlight. Ah, jeez. Hemcar, when will they learn? When will they learn? Anywho, let's go to the rest of the chat. I know I got some things to say. Let me see. Let me see. Ghost Nest says, yeah, the heart of creativity has been replaced with technical worship and pure aesthetics. It's depressing. Classics or where it's at. Yep. Absolutely. They definitely, one of my biggest issues is that we don't take risks anymore with stories. You know, like for instance, you can go either gaming or movies, whichever. There are so many classics that you could go with that are unheard of out of African tribes, and you can create a video game out of that and just have, like, if you look at video games and how they're able to develop, you know, the way Black people actually look now, because, you know, they didn't do us justice back in the day, but now you look at like for instance, you know, now you can get our tear texture and everything. Why not, you know, start looking into different stories, you know, from, you know, African, what's the word I want to use? African mythology and things like that. You can actually look at that and develop a game based on that type of stuff. You can do, you know, Afrofuturism in gaming and in movies. That's a new thing, right? You can do things based on ancient, you know, Asian culture. Well, like for instance, Square Enix. Why do we keep having to do video games based on the dark ages of, you know, of European culture? Why does everything have to have an ancient European aesthetic? And by ancient European, I'm not really talking about ancient European, but I'm talking about Middle Ages ancient European aesthetic. Why do we have to continuously have that aesthetic? Why can't we go, you know, a Middle Ages African aesthetic, or Middle Ages Asian aesthetic, or Middle Ages South American aesthetic? What about like an Aztec or a Mayan aesthetic? Why not do those? It always has to be European. You know? Thank you so much, VS Adams. Thank you. Says my new do is awesome. Thank you so very much. I'm not saying stop doing European aesthetic, but I'm saying keep that same energy for others. You know? That makes sense. Let me see. Def Leopard says pay to play, microtransactions, subscriptions, paywalls, hyper focus on whales, unrealistic profit expectations, etc. has made modern games boring. Yeah. Yep. Lou says Dragon Age 2 comes to mind. Lou says half the time DLC is just an unlock for what's already on the disc. That's crazy, man. Like, you bought the game. They got their money. Why do you have to pay more for something that's already on there? You paid for it already. Jeez. Jacqueline says too much downloadable content and I give the game up as a bad job. Yeah. Yes, Quantum Alchemist is definitely is a ripoff. Krona Ursa says AAA companies are the most notorious for this, though Square Enix probably did something like that I don't know about. I don't think they're probably the worst offenders of this, but, you know, I'm not as big of a gamer as others. So they're like one of the gaming companies that come to mind, you know, when I first start thinking about it. Plus, I'm a huge Final Fantasy VII fan. So, of course, I'm going to think about Square Enix. And yeah, I know where 16 is out, but no doubt they're already developing Final Fantasy 17 already, right? That's what I mean. Yeah, Quantum Alchemist, yes. That says the original Final Fantasy was a risk too, or rather, it was in fact the last project of a small, dying software company on the brink of bankruptcy. And when they have nothing to lose, then they'll just throw out something that see if it sticks. And then Final Fantasy just took off. You know, people like George Lucas, you know, when he wrote Star Wars, any company that would take something like that on, that was a big risk. And it paid off billions of dollars. Grant Scarborough says Sweet Baby Inc. is basically a pawn in the schemes of BlackRock and similar firms. Yep. It's crazy, man. Oh, and yeah. That's why I don't play new stuff. Like the only new thing I played was Final Fantasy VII Remake. That's it. I haven't even got a chance to play Rebirth because I don't own a PS5. I can't afford one. It's too much. It's too expensive. It says Omori says it's only needed a fraction of that amount to produce, which made the greatest game ever. Yeah. They don't need that much to make them, but they want to maximize as much profit as they possibly can. Let me see. Wadi's in the chat saying, hey, everybody. Good to see you as well. Got Norman Kina in the chat. Good to see you. Let me see. Who else is in here? Human rights. I can't click on that link, human rights. I'm sorry. It won't allow me on StreamYard. Pizza the Hut says someone told me that people cannot sell their homes in Florida because of the exorbitant HOA fees. Do you know anything about that, JB? As far as HOA fees, I know the HOA fees are going up. I was watching somebody talk about how a lot of the insurance rates are skyrocketing in Florida because we basically live in a high-risk area for tornadoes and hurricanes and flooding. And so when it comes to HOA fees, those are also going up. It's bad. In fact, it's actually becoming more expensive to be a homeowner than it is to be a renter. It just flipped here in Florida. It's crazy. But I can't give a definite on that Pizza Hut, but I'm sure. Yeah. Human Rights for All says working together. Absolutely. That's one of the things that I love about worker co-ops, is that you literally work together. And Roger Meadows says this is how capitalism stifles innovation. Basically what I've been saying. Let me see. Hello to Myra Page. All right. So let's go to the primary story. I'll do this last one. Roger Meadows says you can get all the games I played on ColecoVision? Is that ColecoVision? And Atari in the 80s on one chip. Popeye, Donkey Kong Jr., Zaxxon, Super Zaxxon, and all those other wonderful games, hundreds of games. I would like to. In fact, you know what I really want? Okay. Should I bring it over here? That means I'll have to disconnect it. Hang on, hold up. Can I pull this over here? Pull it in the frame. All right, so I got a Super Nintendo. I got the compact one with the preloaded games. And one of the number one games I played is Super Mario World, right? I do want the Nintendo one with the preloaded games, primarily because I want Super Mario 3. I love Super Mario 3. that was the game for me, and I want to play that. Super Mario 2 was like, yeah, it's okay. And in the first Super Mario, but I really want Super Mario 3. And plus, I want to get the flute that takes you over to the next, board. Look, I want to play it. And so I want to do that. And by the way, while we're at it, my millennials, I am excited for the anthology of Marvel vs. Capcom. I am excited. Look, X-Men Children of the Atom. When you got to put in the secret code and you get Akuma from Street Fighter on there, I want that again. That's what's going to be on there. They're going to have Marvel superheroes, which I never got to play. That looks really cool. Then X-Men versus Street Fighter. Oh my God, I am so excited for that. Then they also have Marvel superheroes versus Street Fighter. I cannot wait to put in the code to play as Cyber Akuma. Oh my God, it's going to be so cool. Then Marvel versus Capcom. Oh my gosh. I want to look, I fell in love with that game, right? And then the piece de resistance, the one, the only, Marvel versus Capcom 2. Baby, that was peak fighting game, bro. Peak fighting game. Marvel versus Capcom. Let me just can you like hang on, let me share something with y'all real quick. Hang on. Let me share this. I just want to show you guys like just some playthrough. I'll do this. Okay. I just this was my I still got this game, by the way. I got it for PS2. It's not the best version. I used to have it for Dreamcast. I had a Dreamcast back in the day. Oh my God. Oh my God. This was my jam. This was the game, baby. You cannot know it. Like when you hear this music and you see the graphics. We like our minds. Baby. Oh my God. And then, you know, you got characters from the Capcom version. I fell in love with this game, bro.
Spider Sense is tingling. The battle for survival begins.
So yeah, that was my memories. I was a teenager. Oh boy, yeah. I cannot wait for that to come out. And the crazy part is they're re-releasing it. It's going to be on Switch. I heard it's going to be on Switch, on PC and PS4. I got a PS4. Guys, if you can, go ahead and subscribe to my Patreon because I really want to get it. And I'm broke. I want it again. Anyway, let's get to the rest of the show. I have this other news story that I want to cover. But yes, yeah. All right. So what's our primary story we're going to be talking about? We're going to be talking about a rising crisis. Notice of repossession? Yup, it is going up, baby. We got a lot to talk about. How do you know when things are getting bad economically? Well, one of the things is you typically see a rise in homelessness. Well, we saw the rise in homelessness last year. It was reported that the homelessness rate rose 12.5% in 2023 alone. And it has rose in subsequent years as well. But one metric that a lot of people do not focus on is the rise in car repossessions. That means that people cannot afford to pay for their cars. So that's also up exponentially this year. So let's go to this story here. I cannot wait to share this with you guys because a lot of people aren't talking about it. Let me see. Hey, where is it? Here we go. All right, so let's get into this story. So it says car repossessions are up 23% here, and then they talk about how to avoid about going behind on payments, which no matter what you do, if the economy is horrible, it's really a fool's errand. But it says Americans are struggling with a spike in car trouble that has nothing to do with their carburetors or brake pads. According to a July 2024 Cox Automotive report, car repossessions are up 23% compared to last year, which is also 14% higher than 2019 pre-pandemic levels. It says repossessions occur when you fall behind on your car payments, usually by 2 to 3 months. The car market has faced its fair share of challenges this year, with prices slipping at the start of the year to a widespread cyber attack in June. Recently, there have been positive signs for used car dealers as wholesale used vehicle prices increased 1.8% at the beginning of June, a modest growth. According to data from Edmunds, the online source for automotive information, the June 2024 APR for used and new vehicles was 7.3% and 11.5% respectively. So a lot of you guys that have car payments, a lot of you guys are falling behind on your car payments because things are just that expensive. And the thing is that a car payment will go behind before a rent payment will, because people would rather have their homes and try to get away to and from work than to have to be homeless. And so better to miss a car payment than it is to miss rent. So it is getting bad out there, y'all. And I want to share this report that they were talking about. This is from Manheim Used Vehicle Value Index Call. So this is from Cox Automotive. Let me see. We want to go to 2753. So let's go to 27. All right, here we go.
Thanks, Jeremy. It's great to be here today, and I want to take us through some additional metrics with a few focused on the rental market specifically. Here, we are showing cumulative year-to-date check-ins by calendar year relative to pre-pandemic or 2019 levels at Manheim. In the top left, we have repo check-ins. Repo check-ins are much higher this year against 2023 levels, rising by 23% year over year. And compared to pre-pandemic levels, Repo check-ins are now about 14% higher year to date than 2019 levels. For lease check-ins, again, we are seeing much higher numbers this year.
Okay, so if you guys see here, it is much higher repo check-in. So it says repo is up 23%. Basically a quarter. It's crazy how high these are. So let me go to this next part. Let me see, 34. All right. Now let's go to this next part.
Repossessions for the wholesale industry bottomed in 2021 and increased 6% in 2022. Last year, as both defaults and repossessions grew, the market saw volume jump by an estimated 24% at year-end. Through the first half of this year, we've seen repo volume increase close to 20%, but that growth rate will slow down in the second half as repo unit volume had increased a great deal in the latter part of last year. We expect repo growth for the industry to be up close to 10% in 2024 and then level out for the next several years. High interest rates have really hurt loan demand and loan originations, and that has kept the loan base from growing much. Most repossessions occur from months 6 to 18 in the life of the loan, so it's difficult to see large increases in repossessions if the loan base isn't growing, unless we get some shock to the economy. Looking at off-lease in detail.
So, as you can see, ultimately, y'all suffering. Now, I personally don't have a car because I can't afford it. And how many people are, subject to auto loans, these buy here, pay here's, subject to paying more for a car than what you can afford, or, like for instance, we were talking about a previous segment where you get laid off. You have a car, you've had a job, you've had that job for 2-3 years, and then they lay you off all of a sudden. And so then you have no way to pay on that car. And, rent payments are going up. I mean, I've spoken to people who have talked about their rents going up $200-$300. Well, that $200-$300 was the $200 or $300 that you were supposed to be paying towards your car. But now you have to pay it towards your landlord. So guess what? You're going to have to let that car go. And sometimes, look, there's a lot of us, you know that you can't pay on that car. And so you just stop paying on it. But that car, you take it to a different location and you turn the back of the car so they can't check the tag to repo it. But that's the life that a lot of people are living now. So I want to share this as well, because there was this video that I found pretty interesting as well, talking about car repos. And this person was talking about how there's a repo crisis. So let's go here.
Right here, these are all repos, and I want to walk you through and show you what a lot of these repos actually look like. So the reason why I know all these cars are repos is because I can see the seller. I know the seller is a large buy here, pay here dealer. That means that they hold their own notes. And these cars are not going to be traded in. These are cars that this dealer has sold, and then guess what? People stop making payments on them. They wind up here for other used car dealers just like myself to buy them. So we'll just go through the line and show you what a lot of these look like. This is a man, and this is something that's interesting. We'll point it out. This one's got 230,000 miles on it. And I get asked all the time, these high mileage, these 10-year-old cars, how are they getting repoed? Well, most of the time when you think of a repossessed car, you think of someone buying it brand new. They drive it for a couple years, and then they can't make their payment. So a bank like Wells Fargo or Capital One, they'll actually repossess the car and then send it to auction. Well, most people don't pay cash even for used cars. So you can see a scenario like this. It's a 2014 Dodge van, and it's got 230,000 miles. They probably bought it with 140,000 miles on it and then drove the crap out of it and then just decided to stop paying for it, or they went into a situation where they weren't able to pay for it anymore.
So typically it's not they just decided to stop paying for it. It's because they couldn't afford to pay on it. And here's the issue. People who go to used car sales, typically it's because they can't afford to go to brand new. They can't afford to buy a brand new. And so if they go to used car sales and because I know I have family members that have purchased used cars, they have no choice because their credit is lower. And so these auto dealerships that you buy a new car, whether it's Toyota, Nissan, GM, Ford, whatever, their criteria to allow you to be able to afford a car along with the monthly payments is going to be a lot higher. It's going to be too high. It's going to be too rich for their blood. So they have to go to more of the buy here, pay here, little used car lots. And even then, there's times when people fall on hard times. And so you may get a car that's 4 or 5, 6 years old that already has, a significant amount of miles. It may have 50, 60, 70,000 miles on it. And then you get the car and you're driving it, but then something happens where you can't afford the payments. And then you can't afford the payments, so you get your car repoed too. And so now that car is 7, 8 years old, and it still gets repoed. And it's typically because people just cannot afford it. And people will let their cars go before they let their house go or their apartment go. It's priorities.
And this is how it winds up here. So even these higher mileage, older used cars, they still get bought with loans, and if people default, they still get them repossessed. And that is what happened to something like this. And you can see this is what repossessed cars often look like. Nasty, gross. Because really, at the end of the day, if you're not going to pay for it, why keep it up? And these people, they know that they're going to stop paying for it, so they don't fix them. Oftentimes, these repossessed cars, they have serious mechanical issues. I mean, somebody just, I don't know how you make a car this dirty.
Now, that's not to generalize, because there are some people who do finish paying on their car and they still don't just keep up their car, or sometimes we just don't realize people's personal circumstances. Certain people may have personal circumstances where they just do not have the time or the energy to keep their car. You never know what type of person this person may have been dealing with. May have been dealing with depression or something like that. You never know, what the person who previously owned this car, had to deal with financially. You never know, if they just didn't have the wherewithal to be able to get it clean, because sometimes depressed people just do not care because of their situation in life. And a lot of times people who face things like depression, well, things fall by the wayside. And unfortunately, that's how things are. And a lot of times people are depressed because of their material conditions in their life too. There's a lot of different reasons. It's not just because they don't care. So, yeah, I'm not going to be doing this whole reaction to this, but there's some portions that I really want to get into about this. So,
and now I feel worse about my life and what I have chose to do for money. All right, here's another one. Okay, this is a 2008 Lexus. It's got 174,000 miles. So this is the run number here at this auction. This auction's got all of these cars. They have to keep them straight. This is their run number. This is the number that designates what the car is to their computer system, so they put the deals together, whatever. 2008, and this has got 174,000 miles. And check this one out. So this one is just as, I mean, I touched it again. Why touch it, dude?
hang on.
There you go. This is gross, nasty. And a lot of the times, here's the thing. So we're in June right now, and what we're seeing is that repos are on the rise, and I'm seeing more and more of these repos come to these auctions. See, this whole row right here is all repossessed vehicles, and typically in the last year, 2 years or so, as I was coming to this auction, the repos would only come up to about right here. So there would only be 6 or 7. This is a smaller auction. This is just in my small area around Charlotte, North Carolina. And so they would typically only have 6 or 7 repos that they would run a week. But now what is commonplace is that they fill almost this whole row up of repossessions. And it's a factor of 2 things. One, people are not paying their bills right now. Everything's costing so much, and their car payments are something that they're falling behind on, then they get their car repossessed. But 2, this is also peak repo season. 2 months ago, we had peak car buying season, which is tax season. People have money, put down payments on the cars, and now 2 months later, they realize, okay, I can't make the payment. They stop making the payment. Now is when cars start showing up at these auctions. And you even have certain cases like, okay, you have reasonable, I mean, this is a family car. This is almost sad to see something like this. I mean, this is probably a small family that had this car since 2011, 196,000 miles, and whatever life happens, right? People can't make their payments, and then a car like this shows up at auction. I mean, I hate to see it. It's a sign of the economy right now. And I know there's a lot of you out there that watch my channel and you don't care about cars at all. You watch for the macroeconomics, how things are trending in the marketplace. And this is a telltale sign of things not being as good as what we're all led to believe, right? We're seeing.
So when people go, the unemployment rate's only 3.6%, things are good, the GDP is up, what are you guys complaining about? The economy's good, right? The rate of homelessness went up 12%, 12.5% last year. Car repossessions are up 23%. Just those 2 metrics alone. Just those 2. Your transportation and your housing. People are suffering. And I like to see it like this. It's like being in a mansion, right? And people will say, well, you live in a mansion, you must be doing well. But what if I told you that a lot of us are living in the basement of the mansion where we don't get enough food, we're starved, and we're all cramped? Now, you can say I live in the basement all you want. But the reality is that there are many of us that are crammed into the basement, a cold, dark basement of a mansion where we do not have any of the resources to actually feel like we live in a mansion. It's like, so what? And so people who talk about, well, you know, the GDP is up, that's like saying, well, the person who's living on the top floors of the mansion, well, they're making, $100,000 more this year than they did last year. Instead of bringing in $5.6 million, they're bringing in $5.7 million. What are you guys complaining about? But none of that money is actually coming down to the basement. It's not coming down to us. And so when people talk about, oh, but the economy is doing good, yeah, for the rich people, it's not coming down to us. That is believing the hype of trickle-down economics. And people who consider themselves to be on the left will talk about, well, you know, the GDP is up and you have, you know, your unemployment is pretty much down. But that doesn't mean anything. What are we to do? Metrics like auto payments, is it just, oh, well, people just don't want to pay on their cars and they're just being irresponsible? Come on now. People can't survive, man. Hell. Let's go.
Seeing that credit card delinquencies are going through the roof. And now auto loan delinquencies. The problem with all these cars right here, these are all from a small buy here, pay here dealer. There's no entity that is going to be, they're going to let know that these cars have been repossessed. So the numbers that we're seeing on auto loan delinquencies and repossessions, they're coming from large publicly traded companies like banks, like big lending institutions. But Bob's Used Cars, that's not the name of this dealership, but Bob, here, there you go. That one got kissed. But that's the thing. Repossession like this, people are not going to fix that if they're not going to make payments on the actual car. They're just going to let that go. They're going to drive it until this dealer comes and picks it up. But what I want to get back to is that, okay, these institutions that have shareholders that have to report their numbers, that's where we're seeing the spike from. And those are more prime customers. So these customers that I'm talking about right here, that are these cars, these are the more subprime borrowers, and the economy that we're in right now is hitting them way worse than they are the more prime lender, the more prime borrowers. So what we're seeing in the numbers is just the tip of the iceberg. It's so bad right now that companies are paying extra money to get tow truck drivers to the front of their line to go get their cars, because what these banks, what these lending institutions know right now is that used car prices are plummeting, and they're plummeting at the wholesale level. I talk about it all the time. I show you prices here on this channel of what I'm paying for cars, and it keeps going down and down and down and down. So what these companies like Wells Fargo, like Toyota Financial are doing by putting themselves in the front of the line, by paying these tow truck companies extra money to go pick up their cars, is that, okay, we need to go ahead and get these cars, these repos, sold as quickly as possible, because 2 months from now, if we have to wait that long to go get our car, that car is going to be worth way less than what it is right now.
So that is because a car typically depreciates in value. Cars do not appreciate in value like a home because wear and tear. And so the depreciation leads it to be less than in cost. Therefore, these banks, they make less money the older the car is. And it's quite unfortunate, but that's how it is. And so when people talk about things are better, no, they're not. I will guarantee you this. As we go into 2025 and between 2025 and 2029, if Donald Trump were to win the presidency, people would say, oh, well, things are better. That's going to be BS too. People are also going to say, well, things were better under Biden than it was under Trump's second term. Because that's naturally how the process of capitalism goes. Everything gets worse as time goes on. The thing is that the trend was, since the New Deal that was enacted by FDR, things actually trended up. And it got to a peak by the 1950s and 60s. And then by the start of the 70s, things started to downtrend, right? And in that downtrend trajectory, what ends up happening is a lot of people end up doing worse as the years go. So things become more expensive. Your dollar goes less further. And so, yeah, some people are saying, oh yeah, I did better during Trump years between 2016 and 2020 than I did in Biden years. Well, yeah, because that's how capitalism works. That's the trend. The trend is also meaning that, yeah, you're going to do better in the years prior. How much you want to bet people actually did significantly better during the Obama, especially the second term of Obama years, than they did during Trump years. And then they did even better during the Bush years than they did in the Obama years. And then they did even way better during the Clinton years than they did in the Bush years. See what I mean? So people will try to, talk about, oh, well, we can get back to that with Donald Trump. No, you won't. You're not going to get back to that. As long as capitalism exists, you will not get back to a better position years prior. It's not going to happen. Because capitalists need to absorb more from you. They're not going to let up on that. They're greedy. Trust a snake to be a snake. Because when you let up on that, they bite you. So, unfortunately, this is what's going on. And of course, like I said before, a lot of people, they're going to let their cars go before they let their house go. And look, I showed this earlier in the last segment. This is from the Out of Reach, the high cost of living. This is from the Low Income Housing Coalition. Look, let's go across the Rust Belt. We go to Pennsylvania, you have to make $26.26 an hour in order to afford a 2-bedroom apartment. Let me see. Go to Ohio, you have to make $20.81 an hour to afford a 2-bedroom apartment in Ohio. Indiana, you have to make $22.77 an hour in order to afford a 2-bedroom apartment. Let me see. In Iowa, $18.86, which is pretty good in Iowa compared to the rest of the country. Wisconsin, you have to make $21.71 an hour. Now, this is just across the Rust Belt, right? Missouri, you have to make $20.83 an hour. But then once you get to the coasts, look, let's go to New Jersey. You have to make $38.08 an hour. New York, you have to make $44.84 an hour. California, California, you have to make $47.38 an hour. Here in Florida, you have to make $35.24 an hour to afford a 2-bedroom apartment. Here in Florida, our minimum wage here is $12 an hour until September. Once September happens, we'll be at 13. But that's still woefully inadequate. And so you can tell that people are just going to let their cars go. And one of the things that I want to talk about is we need a system where it's more sustainable than to just have a personal car. This is why I also am a big advocate for mass public transit. We need mass public transit, more mass public transit, and high-speed public transit. And I also think, and you guys can call me crazy all you want, but I also think that we should have public transit that is free at the point of service. Fair, free public transit. Yes, that's right. Because ultimately, you can just pay for public transit through public dollars. Think about how much money it costs to pay police to monitor and arrest people who do not pay their fare. Think about how much time it takes, because remember, time is money, and how much money it takes to have fare boxes, to have the transit operators collect the fare, the time it takes to collect the fare, right? The time it takes to have to count the fares, to calculate how much fare that you're collecting. You could have just made it fare free. And you can also take some of that money and invest it into high-speed rail. And not high-speed rail where you're going at like 80 miles an hour on an Amtrak. No, I'm talking about just like what they do in China. I'm talking about 220, 250 mile an hour trains that can take you from where you need to go. Imagine being able to get from here to Miami in what, 45 minutes? On a high-speed rail? 45 minutes to Miami from Orlando? That's typically a 3-hour drive. Imagine being able to get to Raleigh, North Carolina. You can get there in what, an hour and a half, 2 hours? By high-speed rail? Imagine being able to get to from Florida to New York in 6 hours. Would somebody like me be willing to spend 6 hours on a train to get to New York instead of flying on a plane and spending that much money? Yeah. Especially if you're not paying that much. But this is why we need more sustainable options for people, for workers, because ultimately they're suffering when it comes to their transportation. I think freedom of movement is a right to all people. And that freedom of movement also includes public transit system that favors everybody. Instead of having to focus on individualistic means of transportation like cars, we should be pushing more towards public transportation so that everybody can have that freedom of movement freely. Now, this is not to say that we shouldn't have individual cars and transportation, because there may be people, especially in rural areas, that may need it more than the rest of us. But I think that it should be pushed more for us to use more public transportation. It would be so much better for our environment. On top of that, we also are more together as people. We actually are able to communicate more with each other. But yeah, that's what's going on with cars, man. A lot of people are losing their cars. Capitalism is eating itself. Go ahead and give the stream a like. Push this out into the algorithm. Thank you very much. All right. Let's go into the chat. Ooh. That's a lot, man. Start off in the rockin'. You see here. Hemp Car said, oh, thank you very much for the tip on Rockfin. Appreciate it. Roger Meadows said, what Hemp Car said I saw on Discovery Channel or History Channel some years ago about how there was a project underway to use mirrors to reflect the sunlight because the ice caps, which are white, which reflect light, was responsible for doing that job. But since they've been melting and the oceans are dark, they absorb light and heat, making the waters warmer. Heat in oceans fuels hurricanes. Yeah. I like to consult with the scientists first on this one, but I mean, honestly, we need to reverse this, but I don't know if it's actually reversible. But it needs to happen because we need to stave off this disaster. But yeah, Hemcar says they want to spray reflective particles. Yeah. So take a look at that. Let me see. Roger says I peeped it. Oh, okay. So you talk. He says, James, read your DM. Don't read it out loud. I just want to see your reaction and if you'd be interested. Oh Lord, Roger. Oh jeez. All right, Roger. I'm not gonna read it out loud, but what you trying to send me, Roger? Oh, let me see. I'm down, Roger. I'm down. Yep. We can do that. All right. Thank you so very much. All right. Wait, did I miss anything else? Oh, hold on. Man, you guys stay informed in this chat. Man, I'm telling you. Okay. Let's go to the rest of the chat. Man, time flies when you're having fun. Funny how time flies when you're having fun. Oh man, Trauma Queen says I hate hearing news like this, makes me very anxious. Yeah. This is why, we're trying to do what we can to build class solidarity, man. Because a lot of people are suffering out here and we got to change the system. And it's a lot, man. But as we push for more change, we will see things improve. But we just have to be vigilant in making sure that change happens. But I hear your Trauma Queen. Good to see you though. Okay. All right. Let me go to the next one. Lou says Santander is a huge problem too. It's Spain's Wells Fargo. Yikes. Dwayne says they don't care. They just want their money. Oh yeah, Trauma Queen. A lot of people would feel less depressed with an extra $50,000 each month. I know I would. Luke says by wealthy people measures the economy is up. Yeah. Dwayne says they keep feeding us a gigantic-ish sandwich and telling us it's filet mignon. Yep. And that white stuff that you see is not garlic powder, it's dandruff. Nasty behind people. Quantum Alchemist says both in the U.S. and Germany, we have among the highest food prices and the lowest food quality in the world. That's a whole nother thing. If our food quality is low, then that means our health quality is going to be low as well. It's at a commensurate rate. Thus, James, solidarity with you as well. And thank you. Thank you very much. Yes. Dwayne says we already pay taxes. Public transportation should be free. I agree. Let me see. Yes, Carlos, this is actually true. It says the only reason why we have highways and trains is for capitalists in the military. It's incidental that regular folks use them. Yeah, so it was actually Professor Neil deGrasse Tyson was talking about the reasons for the interstate highway was actually for the military to be able to use to crisscross the country if in case they needed to put their Humvees and their tanks on, to get to different regions. It was only incidental that, the public would use them to be able to get to where they need to go. Anytime you have an innovation, you have to look at it at the military industrial complex benefiting first. Like, for instance, the TV remote was developed by the military, and then it was put into televisions. And then it became standard. So now every TV has a remote. GPS was a military innovation. And it's funny how a lot of these innovations were actually made with public dollars, not with private dollars. That means capitalism doesn't breed innovation. Public money does. I digress. So, GPS, Global Positioning Systems, was a military development. And now everybody uses GPS. So it just, we need to have something that benefits us and is made for us as a people, as workers. You see. Bryce says, now I want to know what Roger said. Don't read out loud. Yeah. You guys will see the fruits of that labor in a little bit. Jacqueline says it's a right nuisance to have a TV that only operates by remote control and the batteries run out. I had to take the batteries out of something else to change channel. By the way, while we're at it, why don't we have, if we can have wireless controllers for our game systems, then why can't we have wireless remote controls for our TVs? Why can't we just have them recharge with a USB? Why do they have to constantly use these AAA and AA batteries? It just, and, with the, why not just continuously develop hemp batteries so that we won't have to continuously mine for lithium? I mean, it just makes more sense. And then we can start using hemp batteries in our phones. So then we won't be exploiting people in Congo anymore. And you won't have to keep doing coups in Bolivia. Silly me. All right. So just to let you guys know, once again, this the first Sunday of August, we will be doing mutual aid action. Stay tuned for local time, for location and time. So we will be doing that, and I will let you guys know on this channel as well as on RBN, as well as on these socials. So Orlando Mutual Aid Chapter, we're going to be doing that. And if you guys would like to assist with helping us raise money so that for our next action after this, we deeply appreciate it. We're going to be raising money for grocery gift cards. So if you guys would like to, you guys can help out with that. You guys go to $ Orlando RBN on Cash App. So you guys can do that there. In fact, let me put that in the chat once more so that you guys have that as well. But yes, we'll be doing that as well. Because we got to talk. We just don't talk the talk. We got to walk the walk, right? We want to build class consciousness, build solidarity with the people in our neighborhood. We want the people in our neighborhoods to know who we are, and we want to be able to connect. And then once we start to connect and then build things together, we can build that dual power. That when we build that dual power, then we could start to leave this capitalist system behind. Basically doing what the Black Panthers did, right? So yeah, that's what we want to do. The next time I'll be doing a reading will be of Water in the Spirit with Meladon Produce author. So we'll be getting into that. I can't wait to get into the next chapter about grandfather's funeral. We're going to get into that. And then, of course, going to be reading The Will to Change and then Presidential by Margaret Kimberly as well. So we're going to be doing that subsequently. This Thursday for RBN, it will not be the Sabby and JB show. It will be the monthly RBN roundtable. So you're going to get to see all of us there. So it's going to be we're going to each have a story that we're going to be talking about. So yeah, that's going to be really good. What else? No stream for me this Saturday because a friend has passed away, a family friend passed away. So I'll be going to the funeral for her. And so we mourning her, her loss, our loss. So yeah, I'll be there Saturday. So yeah. And then this Sunday, I think I have hang on, let me check on RBN. I think I have a guest this Sunday. Hang on, let me see. This is why I have a calendar now, because I'd be out of sorts without it. I'd be lost without you. Let me see. So yeah, the round table. Oh, and by the way, tomorrow on RBN, Carl Ja is going to be joining. So look for that. With Nick, I think. So you guys be able to take a look at that. Let me see. And then I'll be meeting with Dabula on Sunday. Wait. That time is not right. Got to change that time. But yes. Okay. But yes, communist educator and organizer is going to be with me on Sunday at 1 p.m. That's going to be Sunday, July 28th. So just going to make sure that we make sure we confirm that time. But yes, just want to make sure I had all that squared away. Now, I will be heading on out. Got some stuff I got to do. If in case you guys are able to make it for the action, I hope you are. If you're in Central Florida, come on out, say what's up to everybody, and help us to do what we can for our neighbors. I think it will be a great. I think it'll be a great time, and we're going to try to do it like late morning. Because we don't want to do it in the heat of the day. So I want to make sure we get that done. So, all right. Because it's hot as hell out here. It's crazy. It's like a dragon's armpit out here. But anyways, so I'm going to head on out. All right. So, like I always tell you, water your plants. Water yourselves. Leave the world better than you found it. Smoke them if you got them. Drink them if you got them. If you ain't got them, then read, because joy is revolutionary and reading is fundamental. And if you have not already, please make sure to check in on your strong friends, because sometimes they keep quiet. And be kind to yourself. Don't berate yourself, because nobody is perfect and we all go through a lot of issues. And this system is built to keep us down. So just continue to do the best you possibly can. I love you guys for watching. And of course, forehead kisses. I'll see you guys in the next one. I love the hat. It's so great. Forehead kisses. Thank you so very much for watching my channel. And I deeply appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you wish to support the channel further, so I can keep bringing you content that is educational and informative, you can become a patron on patreon.com/Jaybefaunt. You can find that link in the pinned comment or in the description below. No matter what you give, you'll be supporting independent media and education that helps make the world better. Thank you so much, and you can watch more of my content here. Forehead kisses, and have a beautiful day.